Hi, I'm Teresa and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my June wrap up and it is nowhere near as good as my previous months have been, so very sorry if you're here expecting, like more than a dozen books. You're not getting that. Instead, you're getting half a dozen. That's right, I've read 6 books this month, which is still technically for me, normally that's very good. It's just recently I've been reading more than double that. So it's a bit like, what's happening? But yeah, I'm just gonna get started on it. So the first book I read was Only Mostly Devastated by Sophie Gonzalez. This is a queer Greece retelling set in the modern day, and I really enjoyed this, but for me it was very average. You have got your main characters Ollie and Will, and like in Greece they have this summer fling, and then Ollie ends up moving and they end up at the same school as with Greece, and Ollie discovers that Will is there and that Will is not yet out and doesn't really want to be associated with Wally with Ollie for, fear of being found out. Ollie's got these really great friends. I really liked how they were their own characters, which seems a bit redundant to say almost, but so many books will have these additional characters, especially in a book this long, that don't really have any role other than to aid the main character, but these were their own characters with their own, issues, problems, feelings, and I really liked that and appreciated that. And I was honestly more interested in some of them than I was in the main characters. But overall, it was enjoyable, it was sweet, I just didn't connect with it enough to fully care about it, I suppose, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. But the next book is one that I very much did care for, and it's one that I think I've mentioned in several videos in a row, so like, guess. Take your guesses now. Can you guess what it is? 3, 2, 1. It's the Falling in Love montage by Kira Smith. So in case you've not seen any of my previous videos, this is a lesbian rom-com and I adore it with all my heart. You follow your main characters Saoirse and Ruby, and they have this kind of fun summer fling based off of the falling in love montages of your kind of traditional rom-coms, which are Ruby's favourites. And yeah, it's just the sweetest thing, and the rep in it meant a lot to me, and just using the word lesbian and so many things like that meant the world to me, and I've talked about it a lot and I don't know how much more I can say without saying the same thing every time. I just really admire this book for the way it wrote its characters and really made them so human and real, and their relationships and everything. It was some of the most real characters I'd ever read, and I loved that so much, as well as just being a cute, fun rom-com. The next 2 books I read were The Devouring Grey and The Deck of Omens by Christine Lynn Herman. I tend to talk about series and such together because I can't separate them in my brain, they're just one big book to me. And I actually reread The Devouring Grey and then finally read The Deck of Omens, and this is a duology that I really love. It is it's very atmospheric, it is very character driven, character focused, and I adore that. And I think there's background noise and I hate that. So Violet, who I'd say is your main character, her and her mother move back to her mum's hometown, and she kind of starts realizing that there's something not quite normal about this town, and eventually finds out that all of the founders of this town have some kind of magic and powers and ability, and they kind of run the town, and that Violet is descended from one of these founders. And it's just, I don't know, I just love the book so much and its characters, and it's got this spooky atmosphere because the town is surrounded by this thing called the Grey, which traps a beast, and there's just it's just great characters. The characters are so strong and so very realistic and human in this book, and I really enjoyed that. And I loved how their relationships and such developed in the Deck of Omens, and There's a couple that I'm not talking about, the author deliberately doesn't mention them, so I'm not going to spoil it, but I love them so much. But yes, this book has got bi rep. You've got, I think, 4 bi characters, 2 of them main, and they're self proclaimed disaster bis, and I love that so much. And yes, I just highly recommend them. The next book is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is a very big, heavy book. And this is a high fantasy standalone told through multiple perspectives. And it's got dragons and sword fighting and magic and politics and so much stuff because it's so big. And I really, really enjoyed it. You've got a sapphic pairing, one of the main characters, and I love that so much as well. It's honestly the reason I picked it up, since fantasy is not something I've read a lot recently, and I've never read adult fantasy, but I did end up really enjoying it. I'd say the only thing that brought it down for me was not liking one of the narrators, which was Nick Lees. He's just an annoying, boring old man, and I didn't like him, and I thought there's so many other people he met in his journey that could have narrated instead. And also, I just, for such a big book, there wasn't much character to connect to, which is what I love and I need in a book, because there was so much plot instead, and that works for some, but doesn't work for me as well, because I just like connecting to my characters. But overall, it was amazing, and I do definitely recommend it. And it's just, when I was reading it, Samantha Shannon has talked a lot about on Twitter and such, not writing a sexist fantasy world, and how people find that weird for some reason. And I have to say, it was sometimes just surprising because you'd think a character would be a man just based on all those stereotypes you have. You know, you'd hear soldier and you'd think man, and then it wouldn't be. And there are so many things like that that genuinely like trip me up. And just because you're so used to them all being men, and especially in fantasy, I just appreciated that a lot, and I recommend it. Also, if you're reading it, I recommend separating into sections. Makes it seem so much more manageable. Or buddy reading it. I buddy read it with Sasha. Good plan. The final book I don't have a physical copy of, but it was a advanced copy of Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and I really, really liked this. This was another adult book, and it was actually a horror book, which I've not read before, but it was just delightfully spooky and creepy and just everything. It wasn't, I'd say, scary. Like, I'm not a big fan of horror, as I've said, and I was kind of worried that I would be scared or something, but I wasn't in that kind of way. You know, it's not like a slasher film. It is more just unsettling, and I just really, really liked it. It is set in the 1950s in rural Mexico. You've got the city girl going, and she gets this letter from her cousin who is recently married and staying in the countryside, and it's very frantic and it's unsettling, and they think there could be an abuse problem or something, so she goes to go visit her and see, you know, what's going on, and she just encounters this very old, decaying, decrepit house and the family that lives in it, and they're all very white, you know, there's a lot of stuff about eugenics and, you know, the superiority of white people and the Eurocentric features and Europe bloodline and such like that. And your main character's not, she's got brown skin, and there's just lots of stuff with that, and I find it really interesting. I'm by no means an expert, but I know a little bit because I've studied um, a cultural history of Latin America is the course name, and there's a lot of talk about those kind of ideas within that course, and seeing it in the book I just really appreciated. And yeah, it was just unsettling and spooky and all of that, and I did really enjoy it. I definitely recommend checking trigger warnings though, because like there's a lot. I have got a review for this and all the other books, which I'll link below, and there's trigger warnings in this review, so although I may have missed some, it definitely gives you an idea of some of what I'd consider the worst. But yeah, that has been my reading month. It has not been nearly as impressive as the past two, and hopefully this month will be better. But I hope you've enjoyed hearing about these books, and yes, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video soon.